Welcome to this week's episode of Marijuana Mind with
Why'd
yours
you
truly,
do, why'd you do
Dr.
that?
Jay Davis. I'm just going to keep going through. I'm going to bust through this.
I can't.
You have to. This is for the guests. Good, Ronan, our guest Ronan, who I will do a better introduction.
Yeah,
You
you're
have to have a
so
pause, or else it catches you in mid sentence, and your mouth is agape or some weird
That's
look.
bullshit. He
That
does this
that
to
pause
piss
that
me
pause
off.
is necessary.
No, he knows we're recording. He knows it started. He knows we put this on YouTube, and so he just stares blankly at the camera like he's stroking out. And then I get all like, oh, the clock is ticking. But okay,
All right,
do
so
it proper. Let's do it
take
proper.
Take two.
Okay, yeah. I'll say nothing.
Welcome to this week's episode of Marijuana Mind with yours truly, Dr. Jay Davis, my co-host, Speaking the Gospel, Cynthia Brewer,
That's a
and
good one.
an amazing host today, Ronan
Guest. He's a guest.
Guest. Is that what I said? Oh,
Yeah,
guest.
and he
Okay,
sounds like a
host.
superhero for like a really cool group of superheroes.
You do sound like he kind of looks like a superhero too.
Actually, he does. I'm not gonna lie.
You have that that Swedish model look covered up with slightly nerdy look of the glasses, and you
I'm
take them
totally
off.
into this.
And
I'm totally
Superman.
okay. Move
Clark
on.
Kent
Move
to
on.
Superman.
What is his name? He is he.
Is it McConnon? Is that the correct
Yes,
pronunciation? Of
Ronan McConnon.
Oh, I was
Ronan
gonna say
McConnon.
Ronan McConnon because I thought that was like so much more like cadence and rhyming.
That was my nickname in high school.
Yeah. Really?
Oh yeah, I was Ronan McConnon.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. But you know what? If you say it's the other way, the bounty hunter,
yeah,
I feel like you should be fighting crime, but you're kind of doing that with like your line of work, which we're totally going to get into. You are the guest of the day. You are the main event. But we do have some stuff, some like house cleaning, some to take care of, to update our. Here's the funny thing, Justin, is like we're going to update people legislatively that is going to change dramatically by the time they actually hear this podcast.
Okay, so let's do the updates, and then I'll come back and I'll do more of a spiel on Ronan McConnon.
Yeah, no,
I know it's McConnon, but we're going to say
the show is all about him.
It really has a.
Hey, it's good. If people can remember it, that's what matters.
Exactly. Okay. It rolls off the tongue. So whatever happens today legislatively for this update, I'm going to tell you by Saturday when the show airs, probably not going to be the case, but we have to attempt to give you the most up-to-date information. So what's very interesting about cannabis legislation in its entirety is that don't ever bank on anybody getting something through and carrying it to fruition, even if it has all of the main parts that are necessary to pass a bill. And what are those main parts, Justin? Number one, if it's a bill in the House, you must have a what?
Companion bill.
A companion bill in the Senate.
From the Senate.
Phenomenal. You've been doing your homework. You've been kind of like reading that.
I've been absorbing things,
I love this. I love it. You're learning so much. Okay. After you have a companion bill, every sponsor of a bill must have a what?
Co-sponsor.
A co-sponsor. Okay. And then when you're doing so good, aces right now.
I feel like I'm on wait, don't tell me.
I know. I'm just actually really proud you're nailing these. So after you have, okay, and this isn't in order, dude, at all, in the slightest, but these are things you have to pass it. So once you have a companion bill in the House and the Senate, and you have a sponsor and a co-sponsor, and the language looks legit, and you go to different meetings, right? And you have to be heard by these meetings, fiscal policy, health and human services, whatever. And you have to get them to like you and like your language, and they're going to tear you apart. And people in public comment are going to tear you apart. But if you make it through those committees, you get to go where, Justin?
You get to go before the House for a vote?
To the floor. Either House or Senate, right? So you get to go to the floor, taking it to the floor, and people then will, decide on which language sounds best, and they'll cross-reference between the House and the Senate bill, and they'll send it in messages, which is my favorite part of the legislative process, because it sounds super secret and adorable, but it's actually just, here's what we want. You let us know. Let's see if we can come up with something that we can both agree with. So the physician certification for telehealth that we've been talking about for months, okay, that was really going to be convenient and kind of not really a big deal for the industry, should have been easy pass. We had every one of those factors we just spoke about, and it was on its third reading. And then what happens? Freaking Tallahassee, what the Florida happens, okay? Which is just standard operating procedure of bullshit at this point. We are just consistently doing things ass backwards. But in the 11th hour, everybody agrees on everything. They have to go for another reading. It dies. Like, it's just dead.
Yeah, why did it die in that?
It wasn't so much that it was dead. It was like, hey, we're not going to agree on language. We're actually just going to insert an amendment that's going to F up everybody's day. But guess whose amendment it was? Our one favorite senator sticking up for all those who have been disenfranchised by the prohibition of cannabis, Senator Rouson. So Senator Rouson had no companion bill. He had no co-sponsor. He would not be heard by a committee on his Black farmers Pickford-Glickman litigation bill. And what does that sly tall drink of water do? He stuffs all of his stuff into the physician certification for telehealth. And they like it. And now, according to like today, which is Thursday, the May the 4th be with you. It was okay in the Senate, and now it's in the House in messages. Like we talked about, that cute little, hey, this is what we like. Do you like this too? Thing.
So it has a pretty good chance, right? Because the Senate is a much more difficult hurdle than the House.
I don't think so. The thing is if you change too much language, it makes people feel uncomfortable. Makes them feel like they didn't have enough time to read up on it, to get insight, to get industry input, and that you're trying to pull a fast one on them. And you know what? Who gives a shit if he is? The language that he's trying to get in right now, and we'll break it down very easily. Physician certification, telehealth is allowed. If you see a doctor in person, you can then see him on the television or whatever, on your computer, on your phone, every subsequent visit. And if you do it before that date, then you get in trouble at the end. So now the bill has a section about awarding licenses to anybody who has been graded, okay, and not had cited deficiencies, regardless of the score. Anyone who applied for the Pickford-Glickman litigants license, okay, regardless of the score. If somebody passes away during the licensure process, that license would then carry to their estate. Sound familiar for anybody? Guess who put that one in? And then anyone who has applied that, oh my gosh, you just made me draw a blank. There's one more section. It would, the licenses have to be deducted, but not from the group of licenses that were turning in their application last week. So that's where it gets very tricky, because we're looking at language changes in the initial 381-986, the whole framework of our entire program being just uprooted, dismantled aggressively. And I think there's going to be a lot of changes with legalization after this thing. We have to watch it closely, but right now it's in messages in the House's inbox quotation. And yesterday they broke for ice cream, which made me red. I saw red when it came up. I was like, you're going to break for ice cream right before this important bill? Anyways, so that's where we are. We are waiting right now. And it could go, they're talking about the budget, which is really the only thing that they actually have to do in Tallahassee is pass a budget. That's it. They don't have to pass shit. They don't have to, this language is, they don't give a shit. Okay. The budget, and then the governor signs the bills that did make it through, and then we're back in the same boat and nothing changes. But that's my update, and that's all I got. Let's talk about our guests.
All right.
You're so patient. Do you know that?
Oh, I'm super interested. I was like, interesting. So now the licenses go to the estate. So it's kind of like,
here's what happened.
The rich, right? Because then you can sell your license, right? And then
that's already the case. No.
Well, that's what everybody does.
You know,
that's already the case.
If you didn't win a license, all you have to do is wait, because litigation licenses come right after the actual application process. Everyone who won a license, there's only 5. And then the rest of them just sued. And they waited long enough to where the legislators just gave them licenses. So yay, doesn't matter if you were good or your application was legit. So now we had a group of licenses that were Black farmers, because in Florida, we had disenfranchised a group of people and made it impossible for them to apply and participate, because we're Florida and we're kind of assholes. And I'm from Seattle. I don't count. Justin, he's from California, Florida, Kentucky, Denmark, South Piedmont, North Dakota, South Dakota. I don't know, whatever. But in Florida, we tried to make it right by giving one Black farmer a license. But what happened is the one who won died. So they gave it to the second runner-up. you can see how maybe that first runner-up group would be a little butthurt that the guy didn't survive until the license came to fruition. So they lost all opportunity at Cannabis, even though they were scored. So that makes up for that. And then it's a mess. We have so much shit, dude.
We
Like,
just
They
had
never started
a
with 5 from the get-go, huh? They should have had it be
the first
10.
5 families, they call them the cartel.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
Cool.
because it's really
there was
really
just
dark.
the applications closed last week for an additional 22 licenses. It's estimated maybe there were about 60 applications, perhaps half of those that were really pretty solid, and it's $150,000 non-refundable fee to apply.
I just remembered the other thing that's in the bill.
Good.
The other thing that's in the bill is that if you applied for a license and you did have findings that made errors and omissions, you get 90 days to correct them. Does that would actually benefit those groups that had those red X's that quote did not qualify?
Yes, it would.
Yes, it would.
Wow.
So anyways, we put this on YouTube, so people are going to see my face, and I'm making faces because we know somebody that directly relates to. So anyways, this is a big deal. This could really change the industry significantly, but we're still ass backwards and upside down, Ronan. And I'm just so glad that you don't have to deal with stuff like this. But you're in the industry, you're in the shit with us. You picked the dope game, right? Or did the dope?
So wait, I have to do my little intro.
Okay,
I didn't do my real intro.
Go ahead.
So Ronan McConnon, also known as Ronan McConnon, but we're going to say McConnon. Ronan McConnon, physicist, mathematician, marijuana entrepreneur. Originally.
Nice.
Do you like that?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Keep going.
I gotta put that in my bio.
Yeah.
Keep going. He's not done.
Boulder, Colorado native.
Ooh.
And again, a serial marijuana entrepreneur. He's run testing labs, which will be of great interest, I'm sure, to Cynthia, CEO of a company called Greenleaf Guild. And what I'm the most interested in, you've actually come up with something called the IDU, International Dank Unit. And we're going to get into that. I don't even want to give anything away on that yet because it's so interesting. Dankness.
Yeah,
That's
get it right.
It sounds, yeah, it's very much more ganja-like if you're like dankness. Yeah,
so this is good. This is much better. That was a complete intro. You are, in fact, the CEO of Greenleaf Guild, which I think is funny because it reminds me of like your physicians group that you're a part of. What is that? The League of Extraordinary Physicians?
Nice.
Or whatever.
Oh, me?
Yeah, what is it? He's not a doctor. It's you. What's the name of your physicians group? Tell the masses, please. Share.
I'm blinking on it. You caught me off guard.
It's like the Physicians League.
The Justice League.
The Justice League. So the Justice League pairs up with the Greenleaf Guild and the International Dankness Unit. I feel like I'm in a comic book right now. This is
there you go.
And the International Dankness Unit has also been widely called the Rosetta Stone of cannabis.
Damn.
Yes.
I'm going to talk to you about that because I'm very interested in the ins and outs of it. Now, one, we need to talk about the fact that you have a dog. We are big dog people. Justin has his own dog. I have dogs. We love people with dogs. We don't like people with cats.
Wait, I have a cat as well.
That's what I meant. I stick to my statement. So he's super cute and he's on your website. And I think he's a good boy. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Oh yeah, she's the best. Yeah, she's the best. Flo, she's actually right here next to me.
Bring her up. I want to see her face. This is so weird. I know.
Hi, Flo.
Hi. He's a good girl. Oh my gosh, she looks like a homeless dog. If you were to like make a homeless looking dog, you know, with like the scraggly hair, like she looks like a Disney movie homeless dog. I love it. She's cute. Flo
but simultaneously good looking.
Yeah, no, super adorable, but
yeah, she's
super
America's dog.
homey. That's awesome. So we love that you're a dog person. So I want to talk about you have a degree in physics that you got at UC Boulder, and you opened the first legal laboratory. Is that correct?
I opened a laboratory, not a testing laboratory, but an extraction lab in Nevada.
That's what I want to make sure we cover, because when people talk about cannabis a lot, they get lab and lab confused. So what I do is testing laboratory, but what you did after
manufacturing facility.
Yes. So
That's what I like to
extraction.
call it now, is a manufacturing facility, production facility, and then testing lab.
So
Because
taking biomass and turning it into a distillate concentrate.
yeah, well, what
Like,
happened is they put stainless steel tables in a room, and then people thought it was a lab all of a
yeah,
sudden.
I mean, potheads aren't exactly like super smart, but we're reasonably smart,
I don't
medium
know.
to
There's a lot of
moderately.
smart potheads with advanced degrees
I
doing well in this
100%
world.
agree, but we are one trick or two trick or maybe three trick ponies. Like I can tell you all of the Seahawks, everything, and I could talk about weed, but don't ask me to help you change a tire
Oh,
because I'm going to get there and tell you all the Hall of Famers and then all the people, all of our plays while we wait for AAA. So, and that's it. That's all I got. Weed
yes.
and football.
I
So
mean,
my career really started out when I was 18. I was a grower with my dad. He had a consulting agency, so he was able to get me into all these different grows all throughout Boulder. And I worked as a grower until I finished college. And at that point, he got a partnership with a business out in Nevada. Um, and their physicist, their scientist that they had that was going to design their extraction lab backed out because this was in 2015.
What was
So
the reason?
he wanted to stay legit. He was working for Ball Aerospace, and Ball Aerospace was
Oh,
like, "Well, we can't do both. Sorry, there's no
yeah.
moonlighting and weed if you want to work for NASA." Okay, so so he backed out, and I was the only one with a science degree. So at that point, I flew out, moved out to Nevada, and worked with this guy named Giddy Up. No
giddy
shit,
up.
Giddy Up.
I'm waiting for my cannabis nickname, but
Yeah, so
it's not there
Giddy Up
yet.
is the inventor of live resin and owns the showerhead patent for the most of the extraction units, closed loop extraction units that are used in the market have a little shower head on top of their extraction vessel. He
Uh-huh.
owns the patent to that. And so he taught me how to make extract. You know, I kind of knew how to make extract before, but he really
Yeah.
showed me the ropes there. And from there, we kind of expanded on his ideas using my science background a little bit. And that was my first real go around with managing and designing an extraction lab. I've had a couple other opportunities to design multiple indoor light deprivation greenhouses. The last,
Really?
yeah, the last one was in Missouri for a company called Hippos. They're doing quite well right now. And then I also built out their extraction facility, and that was a year and a half ago.
So you're using you're using your degree to do, important work in the cannabis space.
Exactly.
You also worked, you're you're on the right side, right, of the industry. You're not like exploiting patients, you're not trying to make products quickly, efficiently, but not safely. You're actually like you're really invested in science and the that side of our space, which is really cool because that means you appreciate what the plant can go through and how many different products you can make out of it. You
Yeah.
were quoted on your LinkedIn as saying, if THC mattered, every bud with the same THC percentage would feel the same. I really like this quote a lot. You also said cannabis isn't a career, which I would love to hear you expand on. But the THC thing specifically is like really important to me. What we know what we've seen as far as like inflated THC values, things that don't seem realistic. What do you think realistic THC can cap out at? What's the highest level do you think
For
marijuana?
the plant, correct?
30%.
Yeah, marijuana
30%
30.
can
is
grow
the
at
highest that
30%
I could possibly imagine, because when
with your
you
scientific background.
with
If
my
it was a
scientific background,
40%,
you have to, so there is the plant makes a base chemical. The name of it is escaping me, but it's like geraniol or something like that.
mhm,
GRNIOL.
yep.
And that chemical breaks down into THCs, CBDs, and also terpenes. So
Mhm.
the plant is sitting there making as much of one chemical as it can, and then based off of the light, based off of the temperature, based off of, does it get pruned, right?
Yep.
All these factors affect how much of that chemical it can make.
Mm.
Then you have to imagine that this plant has to also like support itself and I
physically.
do other things other than make this one chemical, which is going to turn into THC. So by weight, I can't imagine that you could cover there's just the surface area to plant matter is just not high enough for you to somehow say, well, I have
40%.
40% of my weight's on the outside of my plant body.
Right. And
Right.
terpenes are 3%. Or
Exactly. So
it's almost a
half of
liquid.
me, you're going to smoke and it's going to affect you. The other half, that's plant matter. But
So
it's just too much. It's too
in
much.
a fake world where things could exist, what would a plant look like that is testing 40% THC with 4 or 5% terpenes?
It would be like white and goopy.
Liquidy and sticky.
Yeah,
Okay.
it would be
We've
super
said this
goopy.
before, but people just I don't think they believe me because they really want to believe that they just purchased a $15 53% Bruce Banner.
Well, so I highly recommend that you take one hit of Bruce Banner. That Bruce Banner, smoke just one hit and tell me if it feels the same as when you took a dab.
Oh, I don't dab.
You
I'm
know what
not
I
cool
mean?
enough to carry all that supplies with me, like a torch and a rake. No, no one taught me how to dab. But what I do appreciate about your statement is THC does not matter at all. I hate going into a dispensary and they say, let me just filter our products by the THC percentage.
But
Let
you're
me,
saying, but I don't know that you're saying that because your statement about the dab is you're saying that the dab probably really is 50% or plus, right? Whereas
Exactly, right?
there's
So
no way that the plant is.
yeah,
So they
so
quite feel
if I
different.
took one dab of flour, right?
Mhm.
Like maybe, let's call it a fingernail. I took a fingernail of that 50% flour and then I took, a fingernail of actual concentrate and I smoked both. The concentrate's going to get me way, way higher.
right. But are you also referencing the fact that like, if I smoke a 21% OG Kush and a 21% Bruce Banner, that I would have the exact same experience?
No, you're going to have totally different experiences as
So
well.
does THC matter at all?
In effect, I would say it's like this. THC is like the gas pedal on a car. So in NASCAR, they go super, super fast, but the inside of the car is uncomfortable.
And they
There's
only
no
turn
air.
left.
Yeah, you're only turning left. The suspension is not great because it's designed to keep you on the road. There's no air conditioning, right?
There's no radio.
There's no radio, but it goes so fast. That's like having a really high THC value. Well, there's also really nice brands like Rolls-Royce, where they don't go so fast, but the inside is like, whoa, I could sleep in this car. This is the nicest car I've ever been in. That's like terpenes.
Yeah.
So you need to have some THC so you can actually get A to B, but how much terpenes there are, that's going to determine how nice it is. That's really what I care about as someone who smokes regularly.
So what do you think about then all these products that we see that are basically purified THC? So like here we have some that are called True Clear. They make these powders that are just basically crystallized water soluble forms of THC. And
Nothing's water soluble.
And they
Ever.
really have and they have like a paucity of really anything else, no terpenes. But there are a lot of patients that seem to like them
There are
nevertheless.
terpenes in True Clear. True Clear is the way that they extract. They're using the CO2 extraction. And so that's why they call it the True Clear. So as opposed to like RSO, which is they're gonna have some solvents. It's like darker, viscous,
Super
like
dark.
super like chlorophyll-y, like rich, but you can make it at home if you want to.
Yeah, with ethanol.
Yeah. Well, actually, I learned how to extract with hemp using a water distiller and some grain alcohol and a
Mhm.
bunch of biomass.
Nice.
And then I used a coffee maker to burn off the rest of the solvents. I wanted to make sure I could do everything right there at home without any equipment from the lab. And I made essentially full or broad, I say broad spectrum CBD oil that could be made into a tincture. Tasted like shit, but it was clean and it tested perfectly. So if I could do it at home, I'm trying to figure out why people can't do it outside of the house. But Justin's got a good point as far as like, there are some products out there that just completely go as far away from the plant as possible,
Yeah,
especially
my
the
opinion of
powders.
those is basically like let's say you're trying to make a cocktail, right? it's got maybe 6 or 7 ingredients in it. And so you've decided, well, I want to make a different cocktail today. So you're going to mix, maybe it's got 2 of those same ingredients. It's got the THC and maybe the CBD that you're adding in, but now you're going to change everything else. So I think it gives people the ability to make more products and have a different like niche in the industry. But as far as like the effect goes and how you're gonna feel and its medicinal value, I think you really lose a lot of medicinal value when you isolate compounds like that.
I agree. That's why I don't think CBD isolate was very smart. But
We're gonna also add a nickname, King of Metaphor.
I do like that. It makes me understand things better. Like it's
Mhm.
like he's speaking to me and putting things in. I used to be a bartender, so the drink mixology reference and all of that. I've never been a race car driver, but I kind of got that one too. So it's super helpful. What did you mean? Like your other quote that I thought was very interesting is cannabis is not a career. It
Ah,
isn't a
yes.
career. What do people need to understand to appreciate what that statement really means from someone who
So
has been in this industry?
so I've been in cannabis for like 13 years now. And I say that because in most careers, there's an entry level.
Mhm.
Okay. And you work there, you work hard, you get promoted. And then you wait for your manager to die or move away, and then you become the
Damn,
manager.
Ronan. They
Hey,
could just move on
sometimes
to
you
a
gotta wait a
different
long
position,
time, sometimes like 20 years, but then you become the manager of like an IBM facility,
or
right?
he just like maybe gets a different job or something, but death is so final.
I mean, once they're gone, right? It does.
Yeah.
Who knows what happens to them? So they leave. You get promoted. You continue to work hard. Maybe you go. The company pays for you to get a higher education,
Hmm.
and then you get promoted even more. And by the time you're 60, 70 years old, you've been working for that company for 40 years. You've moved up. Your pay range is paying your bills and then some. Right? You're probably making pretty good money at the end of your career, and everything is looking good, right? You can retire on your career, but in cannabis, you don't necessarily start out as a grower
No,
and
there's no
and end
experts
up
in
an
cannabis.
owner of a grow, right?
That's
There's no
true.
stock options for these types of companies yet.
Some of them do.
Some of them do, right? But let's how many publicly traded companies are there in the cannabis space? Maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah, but they're only on the Canadian stock exchange at the TSX and the, CSX Toronto or Canada. But I get what you're saying because there's different facets of what this statement means. So one, anybody who ever like applies to work for a cannabis company that has a cannabis quote degree
Mm-hmm.
wasted their money, in my opinion,
Mm.
because it's not going to help you get a job. If you took some classes that were offered at the local community college or online that said that you're going to be able to have a piece of paper that says that you are now a semi-expert in cannabis because you took this class or this course, that's not a thing. They don't really look at paperwork. They don't care about your degree per se for all areas and aspects. They actually just want loyalty, trust. It's about who you know, not what you know. They can teach you the way they want you to grow. If you already knew
Mm-hmm.
how to grow, they prefer you were green. A lot
Yeah,
of them
most growers do prefer completely green.
because then they'll just mold you and you won't bring any bad habits over. But for the laboratory, we do require that this someone is, and the state requires that someone's a microbiologist, a biologist, has a degree or master's in chemistry, because we need to know you know how to do science.
Yeah,
Sciencey
can you
things.
do a dilution? Do you understand
It's going
parts
to
per
be
million?
universal.
Yeah,
Running an instrument, prepping the sample, it doesn't matter what the sample is. It could be water, it could be something environmental, or it could be a product that's being used for medicine. You need to know how to use that instrument and how to have safe
absolutely.
Mhm.
laboratory practices. So there is prerequisites that are there. But like I was hired as the director of operations and sales for a laboratory when I was a bartender. So I see what you're saying there as far as like moving up in the company. There is no entry level. You could get in with a company that's a startup cannabis grow, and you could be like upper level management. You could be the driver. It doesn't really matter, but it does not mean that the driver won't be able to make it to a C-suite one day. Because I mean, I've seen crazier things happen, but I kind of like the fact that it's not traditional like that. Do you?
In a sense, just having been the consultant who shows up in the rural area and says, yes, you should buy this plot of land because the population will be able to support this grow. And then meeting the owners, meeting the investors and the people that actually funded this whole thing, like they have no interest in creating systems that are going to help their employees, right? And the ones that do, I haven't met them. for real, I've met 5 owners of large $100 million operations. They have no interest in creating pay scales that follow you throughout your investment, like throughout your stay at the company, right? So it's very, very difficult to convince someone like me that I could ever be a partner in an ownership of an actual business later in time.
Well,
Right?
it's not impossible, but I guess you're right. You have to see it to believe it. And if you work for a company like an MSO that does not invest in their current employees because everybody is replaceable to them, and I can just find another one of you to
Yes.
replace you if you don't like or do what I say, even if it's against your entire moral integrity and to your core, it's bad. They'll just find someone else because
Right.
look at Indeed right now.
The CEO may have some ownership because the CEO is probably going to be like really tight with the investors from the beginning. That's probably why they're the CEO to begin with. They don't actually necessarily have cannabis experience. The COO, my father's been a COO before. There is no ownership being offered for COOs, and that's the third level. It's investor, CEO, COO. So that's where the tranche is cut in all of these 5 companies that I've been a part of. So it's been really tough to see that, but I'm getting a little off topic.
No, it's okay. It's weird because to me, my experience was completely different, but it doesn't mean that your experience isn't 100% accurate and valid. We just had 2 very different experiences in
Sure.
2 sides of the same industry in 2 parts of the world. And it kind of makes me sad. I'm not going to lie. It kind of makes me sad that's what you've experienced so far. I feel really blessed that like my experience was completely opposite, but
you're in a testing lab.
I know, but what I'm saying is like, it's still cannabis testing. It's still the cannabis industry. We have struggles with banking. We have struggles with, we have to be licensed. We have to deal with bad labs that inflate numbers. We're dealing in illicit products and capitalizing on it.
You also went in early and you're almost like an investor in a startup, which makes it a little different.
I have equity. I'm an owner and I've been here for a long time, but what I'm saying is it makes me sad because my experience is just one section of the cannabis space, and he's worked for multiple companies in the cannabis space and has a totally different
Colorado,
experience.
Nevada, Oregon, California, Missouri, Ohio, right? So those are all the states that I've been in build stuff, and that's been my experience. So that's really why I decided, I was like, okay, I've been a grower. I've managed to grow. I've been an extraction tech. I've managed an extraction lab. I've built
out. Yep.
I've worked in a testing lab. It's time to start a business.
So what did you do?
So
Tell us what you did.
What I did is I used my physics network that I made back at CU, and we developed an algorithm using approximately 1,000 test results, to create an algorithm that you take terpene test results, you take cannabinoid test results, you run them through the algorithm, and it gives you a value, which tells you what the effect is going to be before you smoke it.
And this is the International Dankness Unit.
Yes, and so I called it the International Dankness Unit because when I was, starting to smoke cannabis, you really wanted to have dank weed. That was the thing. You wanted your weed to be dank.
Yeah.
So I created the Dankness Unit, right? You want to know what your weed is. You want to know that it's going to do what you want it to do. And so the value doesn't determine its THC content. It doesn't tell you anything about its THC content.
The quality, right?
It doesn't tell you necessarily about the quality. It just tells you what the effect is.
Isn't the effect so subjective?
Yeah.
So the effect is very subjective, which is why the algorithm is a categorization product. So it says these terpenes combined with these terpenes move this product over here.
Right.
These terpenes with these anticipated effects move this product over here. So as the patient, as the customer, you can go in and say, okay, I'm looking for these specific effects. It's similar to sativa indica, except for we use the actual test results to determine what the effect's going to be.
That's where my question comes in. First question is, have you ever heard of MJ Buddy?
No.
Okay. We'll talk offline about that, but it's,
Okay.
yeah, I think you would really enjoy it. You might be able to benefit from some of the information there, but it's essentially like the patient side of their experience. They submit qualifying condition for their market, the product that they're using, and then what they felt, and then all
it's like
that gets generated
It's like
into,
relief, right? It's kind of a
for
competitive.
Justin, who's a recommending physician, to recommend better for glaucoma. He can pull that data and everything, you know, it's all free. You can pull that data about every glaucoma user that's on this app. And he said, okay, they really benefit from OG Kush. And that's actually patient interaction with the approved conditions. But I think you might enjoy playing around with that. So we'll talk offline. The other question is test results. So the algorithm is all based off of results uploaded by you, by a lab of your choosing, right?
So we're currently working with multiple different labs. Right now we're working with one lab in Maine, one lab in Missouri, and one lab in Vermont. So those will be for those states. So essentially, it's really important to have the test results, not only the terpenes, but not only the cannabinoids, but also the terpenes, because we want to make sure that when you buy the product, the test results that formed the international dankings unit for that product came specifically from that sample. So it's not like we tested Harlequin one time, said it was some value, some effect, and now Harlequin is that effect for forever.
Right.
You could be a grower and submit a Harlequin to us 5 times and get 5 different values based off of
go to different
labs. Values. And you could
It's
go to different labs and get different values.
Which is what you would expect, right? Because it's a scientific measurement. It's collaborating data to get an
It's weird though, because if you send a sample to one lab and you send the same exact sample to another lab, you're going to get varying results, which is
absolutely
normal. It's normal. But sometimes there are laboratories there's no standardization. There's no standardized methods, reference material, you know, the people that are supplying your CRMs all vary. And some of them can go from like your potency being a 19% to a 24%, depending on how much you want to spend on CRMs. And so it's every variable in a lab setting is so inconsistent between laboratories, and there's no standardization, but there's no standardization in growing weed either. People can really F it up. Just like we can F up testing, they can F up a good strain or genetic. So
you're touching on one of the biggest issues that we encounter as the International Dankings Unit company, which is that every lab thinks that they are accurate and that they have an SOP that gives them accurate results. And the differences come in the calibrations, understanding the evaporation of their standards and how all of that plays a part. So a lot of labs like yours likely buy these standards once every 6 months or so, let's say. That standard
the lengthy amount of time for our lab.
Okay, for your standards.
Yeah.
Really? So how often are you calibrating them?
Okay, that we can't talk about because we don't get into the logistics of the laboratory space, because it's a nightmare in Florida. There's a lot of industry colleagues that would love to get their hands on anything related. And this actually happened recently, but they're gonna have to pry it from my cold, lifeless fingers. So you are right though.
My experience is that they're lasting about 6 months, and these
they'll probably expire in 6 months if you
don't
use them.
I would say so, because even storing these in a freezer, once you have taken some of the volume out of your tube, you now have a larger headspace inside of that vial, and it's all ethanol based standards, so that will evaporate, which makes your standard more concentrated. So when you do your calibration, your standard is actually more concentrated than you think it is, which is going to give you skewed results on the end.
But also the method in which people are testing. So like you said, the SOP, they could believe in their SOP. SOPs don't make a good lab. Like what makes a good lab is, can you reproduce the values and the data that you say that you can with all the variables considered? So like, and then prove it to a third party over and over and over again. So what I mean
so
by that is
we prefer
ISO.
NELAC, NELAC, NELAC
Yeah.
certified testing labs,
What
because
about ISO?
ISO, I'm not
ISO.
familiar with that.
It's okay. ISO is like the industry standard nationwide, except for in Oregon, which has ORLAP, and not ISO. But it's the ISO 17025 is an international standard of judging laboratories and
Okay.
their systems. But at the end of the day, you can get an ISO accreditation. All of my industry colleagues have. They're still, some of them are still shitty because the method that they're using, there is no standard. They all got vetted with us side by side for a license. So we all have licenses. We've been vetted by ISO. We've been vetted by the other third party, by the state. So all those are the things I just mentioned. Can you do this to a third party and prove to them? And we did. It's then after you start operating your laboratory that you realize you have to factor in the business component. The business component is what makes a bad lab worse. Okay, you're lucky that you got a license because there is no expert in cannabis testing. It's too new. There's not even an expert in growing cannabis. And then you have to go find a piece of the market share. And there's only this many clients.
So what
What
I
are you
find is
willing to
that
do?
a lot of the labs that are the most honest are putting out the lowest THC results.
Thank you. We are not the highest in the state of Florida, but we won't embarrass our clients by getting a letter of violation. That's for sure.
Well, and so one of the really sad things is that with that dynamic, it's improperly incentivized for the
We've
labs.
talked about this a lot.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
labs are incentivized to boost their numbers so that they can get more business, because if I'm trying to run a grow and my stuff keeps coming out at 17, 15%, like it's not going to sell and my business is going to fail. So logically, I need to change testing labs. So I call my lab and I say, sorry guys.
You don't want to just be better at growing weed?
No.
Okay, you're
because
right.
I'm already the best at growing weed.
Oh, that's
How dare
right.
you.
I forgot to factor in the ego part because he's 100% correct. He sounds like a lot of the clients.
But you're also competing, right? You're competing against other growers that may not be
MSOs.
as good as you, but they're going with different labs that will give them higher values.
Yes.
Right?
And so
success
there's
and
all of this
potency.
there's all of this issue inside of the lab where inside of the cannabis space around labs where everybody's trying to figure out what is the real THC. Can I tell somebody, like you said, can I tell somebody it's over 30% and have them believe it? And many of us who've been in the industry for a very long time, we've seen the numbers creeping up slowly over the years, but now it's exponential, right? They're saying it's as strong as concentrates. So a lot of times that ends up affecting the International Dankness Unit rating.
Of course.
What's good is that a lot of times the labs are consistently high across the board. So the International Dankness Unit algorithm standardizes the incoming data.
But how do you contribute? Like, how do you factor in regulation changes by market? So like one of the examples I'll give you is in Florida, we have to give you results on an as received or a wet weight basis, which means for our listeners who don't know, the flower product could be submitted to the laboratory. We have to figure out what the moisture content is. It can't exceed 15% or else it fails moisture. And at the end of testing potency, we then factor that value back into the numbers, which will drop the numbers. If you're in a state that has a dry weight calculation, you just say it was 0. Moisture content was just corrected to 0. And then the potency is higher. But in an as received state, the potency is lower because we're factoring in moisture. Now, what happened in Florida, excuse me, is there are a bunch of people. What?
Daintiest cough ever.
I know, I wanted to like really let it out, but I didn't. In Florida, people were cited, fined, and put on notice for quantifying dry weight against the regulations because they were getting higher values for the clients. And guess who left us and went to them? Everybody. So like then they got caught and then they have to go do things the right way. And so that market kind of balances out. But then they realize, no, I still need my market share. How much did it cost? How much do you think it cost, because you have the expertise, to set up a laboratory in the testing space?
Well, it's at least 500,000 per testing machine, right?
At
So
least.
how many of those do you want?
So let's say a couple $1,000,000 at the minimum is being invested into a company where you have no guarantee of business, and you have to go out and poach market share if you're coming late to the game. And what if there's not enough to go around? Then you have to start getting creative because you've already invested the money. You're
So
starting
that's
in
where
the
the IDU
negative.
comes in, right? So
Yes.
you have these clients, right? And you don't want to lose them, but you also
No,
don't want to skew your test results.
we don't
So
want
you've
to
got to
break
provide an
integrity.
additional value to your clients other than we're best friends. That's
Ah,
why the IDU comes in, because you can say to the client, okay, not only are we going to tell you what your THC value is, but we're also going to give you a marketing tool, the IDU, which is
uh-huh.
going to allow you to sell your product faster, because bud tenders like to do the easiest thing possible. The easiest thing possible so far has been to market using hybrid sativa indica.
Uh-huh. Or
But
values. Yeah.
yeah, so, or THC values, yes. But now using the International Dankness Unit, they can say, oh, okay, well, this is what you're going to go do with the cannabis. Okay, so this is what you need. And they'll just show you this one product. You don't need to worry about its THC value. You just need to make sure that it's in your price point. So
What is
from
your score
Ronan,
range?
hmm?
Like,
well,
what's the value range? Hold on. I just want to know what the answer is.
okay.
Because like, how do you score them? Is it 0 to 100?
It's 0 to 100. So a 0 would be like a pure THC isolate. It's going to be all in your head. It's not going to, it's going to give you like a forehead sweat, basically, hyper sativa. A 100 is going to be a much heavier balance of other cannabinoids to THC. It's going to have some myrcene. It's going to have some other entourage effect combinations. And that's going to give you more of a super hungry, sleepy, relaxed effect. So in the middle, we have three other ranges. We have a more of a citrusy range, which is going to be more of a creative effect. Then you have a hybrid range, which is actually, turns out most cannabis is hybrid.
Every
Spoiler alert.
cannabis. Yeah, pretty much.
But it basically is a mixture of the outside ranges. So you can really hone in on what you're truly looking for and have products put in front of you that you care about. Because I don't know about you, but when I go to buy cannabis, like I like to look at all of it.
I cry. Justin,
Yeah.
what were you going to
Yeah.
ask?
Okay, so I have a few questions that stem from this. First,
Yeah.
first to clarify, is it more important what the ratio is of the various components than the absolute number of anything?
Yeah, definitely.
So in that sense, even if a lab is like what you were saying, but just to clarify, even if a lab is very skewed in how they're reporting things, as long as they're consistent and you're getting consistency, even if it's the wrong, quote unquote, the wrong numbers, but they're consistently producing that, the ratios should still be correct. And thus
Yes.
the IDU is still going to be accurate.
So yes, if everything is consistent, then yes, the IDU should still be accurate. If they're just boosting one number, then it's going to skew the
But it doesn't
reality.
mean it's okay.
No,
Like
it doesn't
you
make it
can be,
okay at
you
all.
could
No, I'm
be
just, but it
This is
gives,
something
wrong.
that we've
but it
thought
gives
of at the
legitimacy
IDU.
to the IDU, because
Yes,
even if
to
you have
his
a
side,
lab that
yes.
isn't necessarily, maybe they're not the best lab, but
Right.
they're at
He's
least
not factoring
consistent
in
at what they're
only.
doing,
Yeah.
the IDU should be pretty accurate for them.
It's better for the lab people that are both on the bad side and the good side, because you're not just factoring in the value of THC. You're factoring in how the cannabinoids are going to react to the terpenes, what terpenes are prevalent, what present. And at the end of the day, I don't think I've heard of a lot of laboratories that are I've heard of some inflating terpene values. They usually like they can kind of manipulate that. Mostly they hide the bad shit and they inflate the THC. But
Right.
like manipulation of terpene profiles would almost be easier to catch, because this OG Kush, this indica dominant, or this, sativa dominant, and it has a terpene profile that you would think would never be, they know what's going to be prevalent in their genetics. And if it deviates, they'll call us and be like, where the hell's the beta?
Surprised.
Mercy.
So we find that almost every sample has myrcene in it. Sativa, indica, hybrid, and almost all of them also have caryophyllene.
What about farnesene?
Farnesene? I've not actually seen a lab test for that terpene.
I think I've seen one.
So
we have it on our profile, but I've never
nice.
really, I don't know enough about that terpene.
So right now we take in the top 25 terpenes that we see. So we've got 25 available slots for data for different terpenes. We take in the top 12 cannabinoids. So CBC all the way to CBDV, right? And THCV, right? Ooh.
One of the good ones, THCVG. Yeah, no, I'm glad you don't go into boutiques. Justin, what's your favorite terpene? He's a sativa dominant only flower smoker.
Yeah, so probably terpinolene. That's the one that tastes like oranges.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at you. You should do that. You should just be guessing. Okay, what's my favorite terpene if I'm an indica dominant everything?
Do you like beer?
No.
Okay. Do you like sweeter flavors?
Nope.
Okay.
No, absolutely not.
It's probably going to be like humulene.
Could be. Or
linalool.
No, that's citrusy. That's still sweet.
Let's
You got to go with
no,
both of them. I think I like the more grounded genetics. I like the gaseous and offensive, but I also like pining, like earthy.
Okay.
I want it to be like I rolled up Mother Earth and dipped her in gasoline and then lit her on fire and smoked her in a very appropriate, like human way.
So we've done research not only anecdotally but also using longstanding aromatherapy concepts as well as laboratory testing on mice. There's not a lot of human testing for terpenes
You'd be surprised how many people humanly test at home.
Oh yeah, just at home. But yeah, I'm talking peer-reviewed journals, that type of thing. So the pinene terpene is very curious because some animals respond to it as an invigorant, right? It invigorates them. And some of them respond to it as a more sedative effect.
They do say that that's what you should use if you don't want to anger hornets and wasps and bees. Like, you don't bring that scent around, but you can bring around citronella, and they hate it, but they really get angry and they'll get very aggressive and they'll sting the shit out of you if you bring out anything pining or pining. Isn't that crazy?
With cannabis being so intimidating for people who are just coming into the industry, right? Like, I live in Denver, and many of the dispensaries in Denver have like lines out the door. And so you're sitting there in a line waiting to go into a store. And then when you get to the store, you feel an incredible amount of pressure to hurry up and buy something. And if you don't know anything, or you're not seeing what you want, you're going to make that line longer. So for a lot of dispensaries and a lot of patients, the IDU has been kind of like a saving grace, because they can say, okay, I don't need to remember what the strain is. I just need to remember my value range. And then I can just see products based on that value range. I can say, okay, this is in my price point. It's in this value range. I'm going to buy it. And I'm going to be
How do they know what their value range is to start with, though?
So the product education is important. We provide brochures that have the value ranges. It's like maybe I can pull it up here while we're talking.
It's not so much like if you're 0, you're bad, and if you're 100, you're good, right?
Yeah, you're like, oh, I'm a super heady boy and I smoke blunts all day. I want 80s, bro. I want the heavy.
Yeah, but like if you're like somebody who's like
I
want couch lock, I'm not going to go and be creative. I'm not going to go paint something that's going to move people. I want to just like get really, really high and talk
so here
about.
I'm sharing the screen.
Oh, neat. Oh, I love how colorful it is, because I don't want people to think that if they're in the lower that they're not as good as the 100. Like it almost has to like come up with something that's non-numeric for people to understand that it's cool to be 20. Like I like to tell people it's cool to smoke mids because at least those are accurate.
Yeah, no, some of the best cannabis I've ever smoked was like 18%. And like to this day, I'm still like blown away by how high I got. And I took it to a music festival. My dad grew it and we tested it. Took it to a music festival. This is one of the greatest stories of all time. Rolled us the biggest joint ever, and he had made some homemade rosin that he had like infused in the joint, right? And so I was a big fan of base nectar at the time, before the incidents with base nectar.
Very familiar.
And there's basically like this big cuddle puddle of humans in front of us waiting for base nectar to come on, and we light this big joint up, and the wind is blowing like over them, right? So they're just getting these huge puffs of gas like in their face the whole time.
Sounds awesome. This sounds like a really nice night.
Yeah, it was. And so I'm smoking with my wife, and they're like, can we hit that? Can we hit that like right away? The very first light off the joint, they want to hit it and have us pass it through this group of like 9 people. And we're like, no, hold on.
No.
We smoke the joint for a while, and then we give it to them. And they're all so greedy with the joint. They rip it just as hard as they possibly can, as hard as they can. And all of them just start coughing. So there's like 9 people all just coughing in front of us as hard as you've ever seen, right? And that's when the music starts, and they start trying to like find their shoe. And they're like, where's my shoe? Where's my pashmina?
You got them too high to like dance to base nectar.
Yeah.
That's difficult. But also that's
right?
that's a badge of honor right there. Is like they were I don't want to say, they were dank dumb at that point.
Dank dumb. I like that. That's nice. Yeah. So that cannabis, that particular cannabis, I would have put more in the 20 to the 40 range. Right. So if you're just listening and you can't see anything, a 1
You'll
through
see this
20,
on YouTube.
Okay, yeah. So a 1 through 20, zippy, high energy, and cerebral. And you can anticipate more sweet and lemony flavors in that range. So if you're kind of shopping for flavor, this will help you identify products that are going to kind of taste like you want it to taste. 20 through a 40, uplifting, creative, and active. So this is going to be like your go for a hike and smoke a joint weed. 40 through a 60, full spectrum, hybrid, relaxing. This is the right after work, maybe during work weed.
Justin, then, where are you on this? What's your number?
Where am I?
Definitely like I'm a 60 to 80.
Yeah, I'm a 20 through 40.
I'm probably usually 20 to 40.
I think you're a 20 to 40.
Yeah, maybe sometimes less than 20, but usually 20 to 40.
I think the 1 to 20, the zippy, high energy, cerebral thing, it depends on when you smoke, but like right. I would say you're about 20 to 40.
Me? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I'm definitely 60 to 80. I'm that grounded, like I don't always get hungry, but the relief, the full body flavors, the heavy flavors like piney and cushy, relaxing, calming, and pain relief. Like I don't think I've ever had if I could smoke every time I had a headache, that would be my medicine, but I can't smoke in the daytime because then I'd be useless. And that's because cannabis really works on me, like really well. I'm very,
what's interesting for me is that, most people are going to find more pain relief with indicas. And if I use an indica, it causes me pain. I'm much more aware of my body aches and pain, and
that might be just your endocannabinoid system reacting to the cannabinoids. Maybe it's backwards or upside down because you were dropped on your head as a baby.
So I want to touch on that a little bit. So everybody does react differently to cannabis, right? I've done a little bit of personal anecdotal investigation trying to figure out like, are they on medication? Right? Is that what's happening? Is that what the effect is? Or are they just, is everybody just stone cold sober and just smoking weed? Right? Are they different then? Or is it, are these other compounds? But anyways, what I find is that most people are using this as a way for them, as like a buoy in the ocean, right? Right here, there's low water level. Don't drive over here. Don't put your boat on top of here because you might come ashore. that's like saying, okay, I never want to buy an 80 through a 100 again. I hate indicas. I hate falling asleep when I smoke cannabis. And they can say, okay, I'm gonna go more towards the other side, right? And they can start to understand who they are as a cannabis smoker. Do the 60 to the 80s really like not? They don't like those, right? So many
I'm not a
people know
social
what they like,
smoker.
but many people know what they don't like more than they know what they like. So this
It's
is
not
helps
that I
people
don't like being
identify it.
high energy. I'm already high energy. I just don't I'm not a social smoker. I don't like smoking and being high around people. I know that sounds weird, but like there is sometimes that casual use where I'm fine with it, but in big groups, super paranoid, just really uncomfortable and outside of my comfort zone. But I love getting high by myself before bed because that's what I do. That's how I medicate. And
Yeah,
so all
60
of
through an
this,
80, 80 through a
yeah, all of
100.
this 60 to 100 thing, this is a great night. This is a really nice evening for me. Okay. This is something where you don't have to have a glass of wine. I had a nice dinner and like, chilling, about to watch some murder porn on Discovery Network. And like, then I get really high and I doze off and then I wake up to like, something else playing. And that's great. And I wake up and I'm full of energy again. There's no hangover. But other people that go and do an indica heavy evening like that, they have hangovers, they get like horrible dreams, all that stuff. All the other like light stuff that you're talking about, I would love to smoke that socially and have that happen to me. But a 1 to 40 always is a 60 to 100 to me.
Oh, there you
Weed,
go.
all
So now,
weed is an indica to me.
there you go. So one other thing is, have you ever gone to the dispensary and bought like a gram of like 6 or 7 different kinds? Maybe you bought a whole like quarter ounce, just
Oh,
gram.
you mean a flower?
Yeah, flour. Yeah, like one gram of Blue Dream, 1 gram of Harlequin,
We
one
can't
gram.
do that here, but
Oh,
I have
what's your
bought like a
smallest
mix.
amount that you can buy?
You can buy like a
Okay.
pre-roll that's half. Well, actually, you can buy a pack of pre-rolls that have 5 and it's got like point 3 in each
Okay,
one.
so let's say
The
you buy
shorts.
5 different 5 packs of pre-rolls, right? And so you smoke one and you're like, okay, that's for sure in the range. And then you go to bed and the next day you wake up and you look at your 5 tins and you can't remember what a single one of them is supposed to do. What did the bud tender say about Death Star? Oh God, I can't remember. But now with
Mhm.
the IDU, you can just look right back at it and say, okay, yeah, that's not the tin to smoke before I go to work.
But
That's the
if
I
we
tin
don't,
like
to
it.
smoke when I get home.
but but Ronan, if we don't have an IDU given to us with our dispensary, or
Mhm.
it's not marked on that, which we don't here have that, is there an app or something that we can use and we could plug in the numbers perhaps and it would, something that's accessible to the common man?
Or something where they can upload the actual test results themselves from the COAs.
If you can get the COA
Well,
from the
it's going to be
dispensary,
mandatory in Florida here soon.
oh no
No
shoot.
shit at all. No shit at
Wow.
all. You can say
That's
shit.
impressive. Yeah, because right now, if you go to the dispensary in Denver and you ask them for the COA, they say, "Oh, we're not allowed to give that to you."
Yeah, that's our
You say,
proprietary IP there, sir. I
well,
do
I'd
have a
really
lab in
like to
Denver.
speak to the manager because this is something I'm putting in my body and I'd like to know. And then the manager comes out and says, "Oh, we're
No,
not
no,
allowed
no.
to, I'll have to email my GM." And then
They
that's
do
where it
that
stops.
here sometimes, but now it's going to be mandatory for them to provide it to every patient upon purchase. So
Mhm.
some people already do it, and it's
Mhm.
they are semi-transparent because they'll show you page 1 of potency, page 2 of terpenes. But like for you, that's all you want.
That's all I
You
need.
know,
Yeah.
that's all you need. So if people can upload their own information from COAs from the product they procure from any market, I think 1, it's going to make people start demanding the documents they already deserve to have
Mhm.
because they want to know where their number lies. 2, you're going to get a lot more data, a lot of
Yeah.
data, if
Right
you
now,
had the
we're
ability to do that.
on our back end, we're working on a way for you to verify that the cannabis you bought was in fact rated correctly. They're not just sticking some sticker on there to tell you, oh, this is a 51. You can look up your, what am I trying to say? The batch
Genetic.
number.
Oh,
You can look
batch
up the
number.
batch number on the website, and the batch number will take you to your actual test results. And then you can see your test results and maybe like a blurb of why you got the rating you did based on the test results.
Be a
I
lot
think it's
easier.
cool.
Be a lot easier if the test results came straight from the labs and the dispensaries had no control over it.
Well, we can't do that though. We're bound by privacy and NDA, and we have to get, I mean, the state of Florida doesn't even see the passing results. They only see the fails. So
But
patients actually have more access to the information than the state does. The state is only getting the bad news, and the patients have all of the news. So they're the number one reason why we have a semi-successful industry is because they will out things that don't look right on their COAs publicly on Reddit, where the state doesn't even see that all these things that are passing could be bad because they're not failing. So, but discrepancies.
going back to how could, like I utilize the IDU if it's not already supplied for me?
So right now, unfortunately, there's no way for us to do that for you guys. This is the first time ever hearing of you being able to like request and be legally like required to give the test results to the patient. So with that information, it's likely we're probably going to put something where you could just enter it in yourself.
Or
Seems
you
like it
can
would be
just
an app, right?
the QR code.
Yeah.
It's going to be a QR code on your product. So there's got to be a way that you can scan a QR code that can
Yeah,
not
but
only
it
bring
comes
up
up
the
like
result.
a PDF or a picture. So
Yeah, so there's a program that you can like get working on your computer, which actually like scrubs websites and sucks all the data out. And so if we can get that linked up with that app, then it's no problem. The AI will just do it for you pretty much.
I
yeah, that
think
would
you got something
be
really good here. I think he does.
The final iteration really that we want to get to is creating an app where you figure out what IDU you want to do, and then the app only shows you stores and products that are in that IDU range. So you don't even have to, you don't go to a store that doesn't have,
yeah, that's
let's
genius.
say 100 in it. If you're trying to buy an 80 through a 100, so a 1 through a 20 and an 80 through a 100 are actually quite difficult to get.
Yeah, I was just about to say that because it's really difficult to find. I'm going to say it, sativa. I know it's like a bad word now, but like a sativa flower, and that's like Justin's favorite. And then for me, a strong indica flower is my favorite. Complete opposites, impossible to find because everything's a freaking hybrid.
Right. So
Everything
the dispensaries will be linked up with the IDU. The customer can then see that that store has it and make an online order.
You know what I've often thought would be a good idea would be a variation of that where you basically could, look for a product, right? So, okay, I want ChemDog, and it would bring up, you can get ChemDog at these 10 stores in San Francisco.
Leafly.
And these are the prices at each one.
That's what Leafly does right now.
That would be really interesting because likely that what I find too is a lot of the genetic lineages have been completely mixed and mislabeled. And so you have someone who says it's ChemDog, but really it's not ChemDog because their grower mislabeled the seed at the very beginning and it's actually Banana Kush.
Oh, there's so much worse. There are people that will claim crop failure in the state of Florida, which is completely legit. And they can then wholesale medicine from another grower. They know that they're wholesale purchasing maybe 4 different genetics. They just mix them together and they call it whatever they want. A Franken
yeah,
genetic.
we used to do that in the concentrate lab all the time.
Right, but that's a concentrate.
You just have like half a bag of this left and a little quarter of a bag of this.
You don't throw weed away, do you? Nobody throws weed away, ever.
No.
And nobody destroys contaminated weed, ever. They will find, there is not
a way to remediate it,
remediate legit or remediate illegit, whatever. Go ahead, Justin. I'm sorry you're interrupting.
Excuse me, Mr. Carter.
Wrap it up.
Okay, so going back to this IDU thing, I'm very second I saw that, I was like, we have to have this guy on our show. I love it. But you could technically, if you could manually enter values, which I'm sure you could manipulate obviously where it's going to fall on the IDU scale. And so with that concept in mind, if you're making
reverse engineer the algorithm.
Yes, exactly. You
guys lost me. Yeah,
So
but I feel like the
let's say
listeners
you're
are good.
looking a little bit into the future where it's federally legal, let's say, and you have
Yeah.
pharmacies that can actually compound something for a patient. So you say, oh, this patient has these disease processes, or they're looking for this feeling to help them with this disease. Maybe we have a little bit more data. You could reverse engineer something just for them, and then you could tweak it, based on how they reacted to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have one customer right now who got a bunch of their flower rated with the
Mhm.
IDU, and then combined whatever flowers he wanted to create a new product for pre-roll joints, which he now calls daytime and nighttime.
Yeah.
Right. So they don't. He used the IDU to make a new product.
What
And
about
he didn't actually assign it a genetic name that it doesn't actually own or
No,
exist.
he just
I
called
like
it.
that.
He just named it daytime.
what about, and this is something that I sometimes will recommend to patients, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on it and how legit it is. What if you sort of did that, but instead you had flour, and you knew that you really, let's say you really liked terpene, right?
Mm.
And so you buy a little bit of pure terpene, and you take a tiny smidgen of it and you put it on your flour to enhance it, to skew it a little bit more towards an IDU that you really love.
Mm.
Smidgen of it.
A
Take a
smidgen,
little, just a little dollop, a
a pin
smidgen
push,
of
a
it.
pin,
Okay, you
drop of a
can.
pin.
Okay, we're getting into like naturally occurring versus organically derived terpenes at this
Yes.
point, and
Well, that
how
was
you're
my
gonna.
next question.
Well,
But
that determines what good terpenes are going to be prevalent in a cannabis strain. Is where did they come from? How did they get reintroduced?
well, I want to ask that in a second, but what about my first
Yeah. So I can
argument?
see a scenario where let's say we're back to the pharmacist, right? And they
Mhm.
have 10 jars of cannabis with different IDUs in front of them, right? And they're gonna say, oh, I'm gonna tailor make a very specific pre-roll just for this one patient, using maybe a little bit of jar 2 and a little bit of jar 9 and 10. And
Mhm.
Ooh, if they
he's
could
gonna
put it in like
compound that
order.
together and make that specific medicine for that one patient, right? I think that's a brilliant idea.
I feel
That's
like this
that's one of the
pre-roll
best
should
ideas
have
I've
three
heard
sections, like an
since I
uplifting
started this business.
section, a grounded section, and then another uplifting. So it's like three different, like the pre-roll in order is going to be smoked into three different experiences. I'm going to copyright that. Patent pending.
Cool.
And then what about if you were just, instead of using the whole product, you were just adding in terpenes to try to skew it a little bit?
So I have done a little bit of personal experimentation with some coated rolling papers,
Mhm.
right? And what I find is that it does affect the flavor, but it changes almost nothing about the high. It's pretty interesting.
But
Yes, because the
but are
way they're
you
being
coating it yourself?
reintroduced,
Because it seems like terpenes are so volatile that
they
you'd really have
are.
to have a fresh terpene and coat it yourself, versus you if you were just buying something that was supposedly coated in it, it's already lost, probably most of the terpene by the time it gets to you.
The word coated is confusing me.
Are you coating
Basic.
it, or is it pre-coated?
Like
What?
what I had is I had a joint and I had a bottle of the terpenes.
And
And I
he
Okay.
would
just,
put the
so that's a
drop
solvent, and then ignite it with combustible flour, and it's not going to go well. It's probably going to taste funny, and it won't affect your high because you lit it on fire at that point. Probably not the best introductory way of incorporating the terpene into the product, but he was experimenting on his own. I don't know if that would essentially be the same way that you're talking about, Justin, where
It
you would
is basically, because I'm saying you put it on the
infuse
flour,
the
right?
flour.
So it's probably very similar. And now going back to what you were saying, how important is it, if you have limonene, how important is it? Does it come from a lemon, or does it come from, a marijuana strain, or
That's
hemp where you extracted limonene?
So chemically in the test results, it's very hard to tell
Mhm.
it
where it
is.
comes from. As a user, as a smoker, I would say that it needs to come from cannabis.
Absolutely.
There is a huge difference in flavor profile that you get from naturally distilled terpenes from cannabis specifically. And I'm not 100% sure why that is, but most people across the board are going to say that the naturally distilled terpenes, when reintroduced to distillate, because a lot of people like to make these distillate pens, right? The distillate itself tastes like nothing until
because you took all of that out, right?
Exactly.
During the extraction process.
So back in the day, when I was first working in the lab, we would get the non-natural terpenes and then try to mimic the test results by, adding a little bit of this terpene, a little bit of this terpene, and that's the concentrate. And then we would add in like 6% by weight into our oil to try to make it viscous or less viscous so that it would come through the pen. And so that works pretty good, but you still pretty much just get like a straight distillate high. But with the terpenes that are naturally occurring, when people do, I hate to say it, but when they do CO2 extraction, they can do a pretty good terpene extraction at that time.
Yep.
And then reintroduce those terpenes back into a distillate. The effect of that pen is going to be significantly more pleasurable than that of a reintroduced of a non-natural terpene pen.
Yep.
And you're even going to be able to have different effects in your pen, right? The pen can still be sativa or indica. But with those, I don't know, I want to call them fake. Maybe
they're real. They're just
botanical, maybe.
Botanical is a great word. And they don't actually test well on the instruments that are getting. So we have like a GCMS triple quad Nexus by Shimadzu. It's like one of the only instruments that sees parts per quadrillion in the United States. The other one's in Japan.
Shimadzu is the best brand.
They're okay. They're okay. They are really good at a few different instruments, but then over time, with our experience, there are some instruments that they could probably do better on because we're seeing things that we probably, inconsistency there. But for the GCMS triple quad Nexus, that instrument alone can actually differentiate between the two terpenes. And we've seen people submit terpenes that they said were taken from the original plants, and here it is. No, they didn't show up at all. Zeros across the board. The thing was smart enough.
Terpene testing using gas chromatography, and when they do it that way, it's very difficult to tell the difference. But when you have the mass spectrometer actually weighing the molecule, you can tell. Yeah.
So that instrument would show zeros across the board for people. These were mostly hemp manufacturers that were making CBD products, Delta 8 products, and they swore that these were terpenes that were taken from a cannabis plant or hemp. No, they were botanical and they were not detected. And then we thought something was wrong with the instrument. We tested obviously another product and it was perfectly fine. But when you see parts per quadrillion, they make you use that instrument for bad stuff, like solvents, volatile pesticides in this case. So unfortunately, volatile pesticides can only be seen on a GCMS instead of an LCMS. And so now we have to look for the bad shit at parts per quadrillion. And then terpenes gets ran on a different instrument. But we had fun there for a couple of days.
Yeah, pesticides are like, I see a lot of labs subcontract out their pesticide testing because
it's not easy, but it's definitely you're not going to see certain pesticides on an LCMS. And so people will intentionally outfit their lab with an LCMS because they don't want to have to fail people.
Well, and that mass spectrometer, like we said, is like $500,000 plus. So if you've already built your lab and now you have to go buy another $500,000 piece of equipment, it's really...
The LCMS being so pricey, but not being able to see volatiles and having to use and utilize a GCMS triple quad in addition to an LCMS, it sucks, but it's the right way to do it because you can't see them all on one instrument. And if you know that, it's your obligation. And if you have integrity and good character, it's your obligation to do it the right way so that you do see everything. People don't want to see everything. They want you to tell them it's super potent, it's really terpy, it's going to get people fud up. And you also did it perfect and it's super clean and no one's going to get hurt. Way to go. You're the world's best weed grower. It's just not practical. And nobody's done that. Justin's laughing because one day I would love to say that to a client.
What do you think about places? Are there certain companies like 710 Labs, for example, says that we're the best at producing these very, very
Oil.
terpene rich oils that are true to the plant. Are some growers just they're superior at growing or extracting or creating things than others?
There is, well, they used to call them hash artists, right? And that's because there is a little bit of artistry involved in making a good concentrate. There's definitely an artistry involved in growing healthy, happy plants,
Yeah.
right? And you can definitely become a master at it. And the difference in the quality that you're going to produce as a master versus that of a novice is going to be significant. So in terms of like shatter, right? That was like, I don't know if many people still even make shatter, but
They do here in
in terms of
Florida.
shatter, right? You're going to have a clearer shatter because when you did your pour, you got less, caro, not caryophyllene, less
Chlorophyll?
chlorophyll. Thank you. You got less chlorophyll in your dump. So your color is better. And
In
it's,
your
and it's,
dump.
and it's clearer. Yeah, well,
Um,
because you there's a little
in
lever, and
shatter.
you
I'm with you.
physically move the lever, right? And so
It's
the
just
timing on that
Mhm.
is mastery, right? You have to know because you a lot of times there's only this little sight glass, and so you only get to know when it's full, let's say.
Right.
And let's say your container's not full. Well, you don't want to over soak it with your solvent.
Right.
So it's all about knowing how tight to pack it, how long to soak it, then how long to purge it,
Purge. Yep.
what temperatures, do you flip it, right? There's all these different things that can go on with just shatter,
Yeah,
right?
but people don't understand in Florida that shatter is supposed to be clear because we've never seen it.
All right. Yeah,
All
it's
right,
supposed to
here.
be blonde, nice and clear and blonde.
So
Kind
that
of
makes
like red
Sorry.
of the 20 here.
She's a brunette and she's not going back blonde. She's got dark, rich hair and it's not blonde.
so
It's not even
speaking
dishwater blonde.
speaking of that on that topic, but slightly going on. Clinical question. I have, we have here in Florida, we have RSO. It's
Rick
always,
Simpson oil.
yeah, it's
Yes, yes.
always very dark, viscous concentrate,
Mhm.
super dark looking brown.
Because the plant matter is still in there.
Okay, so fine. And then people say it works great, but it's very difficult for many people to use because you're never going to be able to get a consistent exact dose that you can repeat every time. And it's very difficult to take small doses as well
You
because of the
don't, you
way it's
take 1
delivered.
gram at
So
once.
that's a lot, right? That's
Because
gonna
you've
F
got
up a
something
lot of people.
seriously wrong with you that you actually need RSO.
But there are many people that could benefit by RSO if they could consistently take, 5 milligrams of it or 10 milligrams of
Put it
it.
in a tincture.
So that's my question.
Mhm.
Two of the companies here have recognized that, or that they're missing a market anyways, and they've made it into a tincture. But when I see their tincture is perfectly, like golden and clear. And I'm like, well, I love the concept of what they're telling me this is, but it doesn't look anything like the RSO
Right.
concentrate. Is it really RSO? Or
Yeah, it
are
could
they
be
just saying it's
MCT
RSO?
oil. It could be MCT oil mixed with RSO at the small potency that you're talking about. It would be an
Mhm.
amber color. Okay. But if
So
you're talking about higher potency with hemp oil, which would be more medically beneficial, in my opinion, because hemp oil works better with hemp, well, cannabis, in my opinion, whatever. No science behind this statement, but that would be something that would be super rich looking in color. It wouldn't be amber, it'd be dark, like
yeah,
foresty green.
so on a science level, when you go from RSO to a tincture, you're increasing the amount of like alcohol in the solution, right? That's what a tincture is, like mostly a little bit of alcohol with the things dissolved into it.
Mhm.
So if you were to put the RSO back, so it's made with ethanol in the first place. Okay, so they have a big 50-gallon drum of high grade food grade ethanol, which is just grain alcohol, basically. So science version of grain alcohol.
Mhm.
And just put all the plant matter in there and it sucks out a bunch of chlorophyll and all the good stuff with it. And then they evaporate that off, and that's the RSO that you get. And that's really dark because oftentimes you would make RSO out of low quality flour. It's going to affect you the same. And in fact, it might even be better because you'll have more CBN content as the THCs and CBDs break down. but they undergo, when they put it in, if you reintroduce that back into ethanol, you're going to get some floaties in it. You know, it's not all going to redissolve perfectly. You're going to have some floaties in there. And if you freeze that, you put that in an ultra cold freezer, you can do a process called winterization.
Yes.
Which takes out all of these really dark colored plant fats and lipids. And that's going to significantly improve the color of the solution.
Is it still going to have the same qualities though that you expect in an RSO?
I think it's going to change a little bit, right? So when you take the RSO, it's usually oral, right? You eat it, and you're eating the chlorophylls, you're eating the plant matters, you're eating all that stuff. So in my opinion, it's all kind of acting together, you know, no data there. But my opinion is that when you separate out a plant fat and you're no longer eating that, it's taking with it some amount of chemical with it, right? Whether it's 0.1% THC or what, that's getting stuck up in that. So you're affecting the ratios of what you're taking for sure.
So it should be called RSO-ish tincture.
Yeah.
All right, we have to wrap it up for the day, guys, because
right.
you have exceeded time, Justin Davis, and now I have to go. But like, I feel like you can keep going. We're probably gonna have to break this into 2 episodes, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I could go forever on this.
I know, and that's what we're gonna do. What we're gonna do is we will find some topics that will be more organized, because Justin wants to nerd out with you. I mean, I love it because you're speaking my language 100%, but people need to understand a little bit more about the processes in which their medicine is manufactured, made, produced, cultivated. You've got the inside information that would be incredibly valuable to them. So
yeah, I'd love to give a little rundown
100%.
on how to make shatter, how to make live resin, how to make rosin at your house.
Well, not so much giving them the power to do it at home, but having them understand the process that is done behind the scenes.
Well, rosin you could do at home safely.
Right, but like legally not in the state of Florida. So
you can't squish a bud.
We can't encourage someone to do that.
Oh.
But if you were to say it abstractly, then yes.
Yes, of course.
It's fine. Just like I don't encourage people.
Bud.
Well, it might be beneficial because the prices are out the door on those, and making it at home is going to be a lot more.
I think that no, I think that you can make anything you want as long as you're buying the flower from the dispensary.
No, because if you get caught with it, Justin, then you have to get into the fact that there's no label, there's no product packaging, there's no doctor's ID. Okay, we can't get into this right now. We will pick this up.
That's an interesting point.
We will schedule him for another one, and I'm telling you now, before we give people the bad ideas, we're going to give them the good information. And then we will have another episode where we can talk about product types. Just make a list, Justin, and we'll cover all of your little believies, I promise.
Okay.
So you have too much information to be a guest. We need you to talk about like really shallow and like things like boobs and rap music and how marijuana has affected, TV and stuff like that. But this is actually really good. And I like how colorful it is. So I'm going to have to.
Well, thanks so much for having me on the show, you guys. It's been a pleasure talking with you and getting to know you guys. Learning about some of the legislature in Florida, also very interesting.
Such a shit show. I like that you're pretending, but I will sign off. This is Cynthia Brewer for the Marijuana Mind. We will talk to you next week. And my wonderful co-host, he who speaks so much.
Oh,
that's you.
J-Dog Davis. So you like to call me. Keeping it lean, keeping it as always. J Nasty.
Keeping it lean, keeping it green, keeping it mean, keeping my spleen, whatever you say this week. All right.
Trampoline. We're going to do a little freestyle here.